Right now, something is happening in grocery stores across the country that most people are completely missing. Not because the shelves are empty, because they still look fine. And that is the trap. Real shortages do not arrive with sirens, they do not come with emergency broadcasts or dramatic headlines. They come with a partially filled row. A product there on Tuesday and gone by Friday. A temporarily unavailable tag that one day quietly stops getting replaced. And by the time the average person notices, the window to act has already closed. Permanently. 9 specific foods are disappearing right now. Not all at once. Quietly. Systematically. The way every real shortage in history has always begun hidden in plain sight, invisible to anyone not paying close attention. Here is what nobody in this space is telling you with full honesty. The system that puts food on those shelves is more fragile right now than at any point in modern history. Close to 7,900 grocery stores are expected to close in 2026 alone. But the closures are not even the real problem. The real problem is what is vanishing from the ones still open, and why it is not coming back at the same price or in some cases, at all. One item on this list has already doubled in price in under 2 years. Another has a shelf life of 3,000 years and is still getting harder to find. And the most unsettling item, the one I am saving for the end of this video, is something sitting in most kitchens right now that is about to become one of the hardest things to replace when the moment comes. Stay with me through all 9. Because the last one changes how you see everything else on this list. And if you have been living without this knowledge, you have been more exposed than you realized. Before we get into it, I put this channel together specifically for people who want to stop being the last to know. Every week, we go deep into what is actually happening to the food system, what it means for your household, and what you can do about it before everyone else figures it out. If that is the kind of information you want ahead of the crowd, hit subscribe right now. Because the people who find this channel after the shelves are already empty will wish they had found it today. Let's go. Number 9. Canned sardines and mackerel. 3 years ago, a quality tin of sardines and olive oil cost around $2. Today, that same product from the same brands runs $4 or more at most major retailers. A 100% price increase in 36 months. Double. On a product that did not change. And price is not even the main concern. Multiple major international fisheries have formally reduced their sardine and mackerel catch quotas, not voluntarily, in direct response to declining fish populations and ocean temperatures physically changing where these fish spawn and migrate. Overfishing and climate-driven ocean changes are not separate problems. They are compounding each other in real time. When quotas fall, global supply contracts. C. When supply contracts and demand stays flat, prices rise and availability becomes unpredictable. That cycle is now fully active. Here is the part that demands serious attention. A single can delivers high-quality complete protein, significant dietary fat, and omega-3 fatty acids at concentrations that exceed most dedicated fish oil supplements. Research consistently links omega-3 deficiency measurable over weeks, not months, to declines in focus, mood stability, and immune function. These are not abstract concerns. They are documented physiological outcomes on a predictable timeline. And the ocean conditions driving this shortage are not reversing on any timeline that matters for your pantry. What you are paying today is not a temporary spike. It is the new floor. And the floor is still rising. Go for olive oil packed versions. Most cans carry a shelf life of 3 to 5 years. The price trend alone justifies buying ahead right now, before the next adjustment hits. Number 8. Canned tomato paste. This one surprises people every time. Because tomato paste feels permanent. Under $1. Completely reliable. Completely boring. But, so how is it disappearing? One number. 95%. That is the documented share of all processed tomatoes in the United States grown in a single geographic region, California's Central Valley. Not roughly. Not approximately. 95%. One drought. One water restriction cycle. And there is no meaningful domestic backup. The processors in other regions do not exist at the required scale. When California output drops, the shelves empty and there is nowhere to turn. Water restrictions tied to prolonged drought have tightened significantly. Labor costs have exploded at both farming and processing levels. Smaller producers are leaving the business entirely. Steel and aluminum costs for canning have risen sharply. Low-margin products like small tomato paste cans are among the first cut when production capacity is constrained. Grocery employees are already describing back orders running 6 weeks or longer. Partial shipments selling out within hours. Corporate guidance telling staff not to expect normal inventory for months. Think about what tomato paste does to everything else in a stressed food supply. Rice and beans become chili. Canned vegetables become soup. Pasta transforms from something flat into something people actually want to eat. In any extended period of limited variety, That transformation carries far more psychological and practical weight than most people understand until they are actually living through it. Number 7. Bulk yeast. Most people have never stopped to ask where yeast actually comes from. They buy the little packets and give it no further thought. That is exactly the problem. Yeast production in North America is concentrated in a small number of highly specialized facilities. It is a living organism requiring controlled fermentation environments and precise temperature management at every stage of production and distribution. When demand outpaces those facilities, the gap does not close in days. It closes in months. When home baking surged in 2020, manufacturers scaled up. When that wave cooled, they scaled back. But the baking habit did not fully disappear. Yet, baseline demand today is meaningfully higher than 2019. Production capacity has largely reverted to pre-2020 levels. Multiple grocery procurement managers have described yeast as being on internal watch lists products they are genuinely uncertain about keeping consistently stocked. When multiple stores across a region run out simultaneously and that pattern repeats across a full quarter, it is not a logistics hiccup. It is a structural supply mismatch. Vacuum-sealed commercial yeast in 1-pound blocks stored in a freezer holds full viability for 5 years or longer. Each block equals more than 60 individual retail packets at a fraction of the cost. Baking bread from scratch is one of the most foundational food capabilities a household can have. Without viable yeast, that capability simply disappears. And there is no industrial substitute on another shelf. Either you have working yeast or you do not. Here is something most people lost in the last 50 years. You can capture wild yeast from your own environment. Fruit skins, apple peels, grape skins, herb stems, all carry wild yeast cultures that can be cultivated into a sourdough starter. A perpetual, self-renewing leavening source that costs nothing after the first week and never runs out. Your great-grandmother did not depend on a factory to leaven her bread. That knowledge did not disappear. The world just convinced people it was unnecessary. It is becoming necessary again. Number 6. Large format cooking oil. 2 years ago, a 1-gallon jug of vegetable oil cost around $6. Today, $12 to $14. More than double. In 24 months. 12. More. And availability of large format containers has also become genuinely inconsistent. On multiple recent occasions across different retail chains, gallon jugs were not low in stock. They were simply gone. No explanation. No restock date. Ukraine was historically one of the largest global exporters of sunflower oil. That supply has been severely and persistently disrupted. Palm oil faces output restrictions and regulatory pressure in key producing countries. Soybean prices have climbed alongside broader grain cost increases. These are structural shifts, not temporary hiccups. Now understand why this is more dangerous than it appears. Dietary fat is not optional. The body requires it to absorb fat-soluble vitamins A, D, E, and K. Without adequate fat, those vitamins pass through unused regardless of how much you consume otherwise. Most core pantry staples, rice, beans, canned vegetables contain almost no fat. A food supply built around those staples without a fat source produces real, measurable nutritional deficiencies within weeks. Documented outcomes include persistent fatigue, cognitive fog, hormonal disruption, and weakened immunity. That is, established physiology, not theoretical concern. A gallon of vegetable oil contains roughly 30,000 calories. At today's price, that is less than half a cent per calorie. Most purpose-built emergency food products cost 5 to 10 times more per calorie. Calorie for calorie. Cooking oil is one of the most efficient items it is possible to store. And it is something that can be grown. Oilseed sunflowers in virtually any climate zone, producing 50% fat seeds that can be pressed, eaten, or stored from soil that belongs entirely to you. Number 5. Bulk bouillon. It looks like almost nothing. A cube the size of a sugar cube. And most people dismiss it immediately. That is a serious mistake. 1 cube produces 1 cup of seasoned broth for roughly 5 cents. A standard can of broth costs around $2 for the same volume. 40 times the cost for an identical result. But economics are not the point. The point is what bouillon does to everything else in a stressed food supply. Plain rice in bouillon broth is a completely different experience from plain rice in water. Beans simmered with bouillon become something that resembles an actual meal. Canned vegetables and bouillon broth become soup. This one ingredient functions as a flavor multiplier across an entire pantry. And there is a dimension almost all preparedness content skips over entirely. There is a documented psychological effect that builds during extended periods of monotonous eating. Not hunger. Monotony fatigue. It builds quietly, wears down mood and functioning across an entire household, and reaches dangerous levels before most people name what is happening. Research in military and humanitarian contexts consistently identifies flavor variety as one of the most effective and lowest cost interventions for maintaining psychological stability under food restriction. Bouillon does not solve the problem, but it meaningfully slows the erosion. Bulk format bouillon containers of 200 cubes or more is increasingly difficult to find. Warehouse stores that carried it reliably are now showing empty shelves with no posted restock dates. The small retail boxes remain, but for building any real reserve, they are not practical. Now here is something I want you to hold on to because I will come back to it. The household that understands how to replace this from a small growing space: herbs, garlic, celery, dehydrated and powdered, is operating with a level of food independence that most households will not achieve before they need it. Keep that thought. We are building towards something. Number 4. Shelf-stable bacon. Fully cooked. Vacuum sealed. No refrigeration. 18 months shelf life. The skepticism is understandable. 30 seconds in a pan dissolves it. The smell fills the room. The flavor is real. It is not the best bacon ever eaten, but in a food supply under extended stress, that is not the standard it needs to meet. Most staple long-term foods are carbohydrate-heavy and nearly fat-free. Shelf-stable bacon changes the nutritional profile of those meals. More importantly, it changes the psychological experience of them. In prolonged periods of restricted food variety, monotony builds into something genuinely dangerous before most people recognize it. Research on extended food restriction consistently identifies sensory familiarity as one of the most effective ways to maintain emotional stability. Bacon has one of the most recognizable appetite-stimulating aromas in human food experience. Adding it to a rice or bean dish does not just change the flavor. It changes the entire feeling of that meal in a way disproportionate to its physical quantity. Several brands producing this reliably just 12 to 18 months ago have moved to backorder or quietly discontinued it. When manufacturers are contacted about timelines, responses are vague. When a company cannot tell you when a product is coming back, it means they genuinely do not know. That is a different signal than a standard backorder. The availability window is narrowing. Number 3. Canned butter. Most people have never bought this. Never noticed it on a shelf. Real dairy butter. Sealed into shelf-stable packaging. In cool conditions it maintains quality for 5 to 10 years. A refrigerator stick of butter begins degrading in 3 to 4 weeks. Frozen butter develops freezer burn within 6 months. The gap in storage life is not small. It is measured in weeks versus years. Now understand the supply situation behind this product right now. There are only 3 major producers in the United States making genuine shelf-stable canned butter at commercial scale. 3 companies for the entire country. Under normal conditions, that is already a dangerously concentrated supply chain. Conditions right now are not normal. 2 of those 3 producers have recently run into serious and separate operational problems. One facility experienced a fire that substantially cut output capacity. The second is struggling not with butter but with a shortage of the metal cans needed to package it. A packaging problem has slowed production to a fraction of normal output. Rising consumer demand meeting shrinking supply from 2 of the only 3 producers in the entire market. That is the precise formula for a shortage, and it is happening right now in a category almost nobody was watching. Farm supply stores that stocked this reliably 6 months ago are now frequently sold out with unpredictable restock timelines. The window is narrowing, faster than most people have processed. Number 2. Pull tab evaporated milk. Here is something important to understand about how real shortages actually begin, because it is different from how most people imagine. They do not start with every store running out simultaneously. They start with signals so small and so easy to explain away that most people dismiss them until it is too late. A partially filled row. A product present 1 week and gone the next. A temporarily out of stock tag that stays up for 3 weeks. And then one day the tag disappears. Because the store has quietly stopped, expecting regular shipments. Pull tab evaporated milk is following exactly that pattern across multiple retail chains in multiple regions right now. Inventory tracking over several months shows a clear repeating sequence. Rows that once held full stacked product are now frequently partial or empty. Out-of-stock tags have appeared and disappeared at multiple locations simultaneously, which is the specific signal that retail staff have stopped posting them because they no longer know when restocking will occur. Dairy processors under margin pressure prioritize highest revenue products first. Fresh milk and cheese, ahead of shelf-stable alternatives. B. The pull tab format requires additional manufacturing steps that are among the first eliminated when production is scaled back. The format most useful in an emergency becomes the hardest to find precisely when emergencies become more likely. And do not underestimate that pull tab detail. In any situation where normal routines are disrupted, a serious storm, an extended power outage, an evacuation, being able to open a can without a separate tool is a genuine practical advantage that sounds trivial right now and will not sound trivial at all on day 3 of a power outage. Searching for equipment in a dark kitchen. 1 cup delivers approximately 16 grams of protein in a shelf-stable, concentrated form. It works in coffee, baking, soups, and reconstituted as a near-identical substitute for fresh milk. For households with children, elderly members, or anyone dependent on dairy for calcium and protein, this product carries practical weight that goes far beyond convenience. The shortage is quiet, gradual, and structural. It will not make headlines. It will become obvious at retail level over the coming months, to people who are not watching for it today. And here is what I want you to understand. Everything I have shown you in items 2 through 9 is connected to a single overarching vulnerability that almost nobody in this conversation is naming directly. That vulnerability is the subject of item number 1. And when you understand it, you will also understand why the knowledge we share on this channel every single week is not just interesting. It is the difference between being prepared and being caught completely exposed at the worst possible moment. The people watching this channel regularly will know what is coming before it arrives. The people who find this channel after the fact will understand what they missed. If you have not subscribed yet, this is the moment. Not because I am asking you to, because what I am about to show you makes everything we have covered so far look like a warm-up. And this channel covers these developments every week, before they reach the shelves, before they reach the headlines, before the window closes. Subscribe now and turn on notifications. You will understand why by the time this video ends. Number 1. Large format honey. This is the only item on this entire list that will never expire. Not in the marketing sense. Not approximately. In the literal, chemically verifiable sense. 12. 12. 12. 12. 12. 12. Don't. 12. 12. Not equal. 12. Don't. Honey has a water activity level too low to permit microbial growth of any kind. Its pH is acidic enough to inhibit bacterial activity. It naturally produces trace amounts of hydrogen peroxide through enzymatic activity, providing continuous antimicrobial protection as long as the honey remains uncontaminated. Archaeologists excavating ancient Egyptian tombs recovered honey estimated at more than 3,000 years old. When tested by food scientists, it was chemically intact. Still edible. 3,000 years. Nothing else in any pantry anywhere is in the same category. Not canned goods. Not freeze-dried meals. Not vacuum-sealed grains. Honey sits entirely alone at the top of that list, and has for the entire recorded history of human food storage. And right now, large format honey 5-pound jugs and larger is becoming genuinely difficult to find at retail. Not impossible. But the pattern of availability is shifting in a direction that anyone watching closely should take with complete seriousness. 2 distinct pressures are converging simultaneously from opposite ends of the supply pipeline. Domestic bee colony collapse continues to reduce the productivity of American honeybee populations. Pesticide exposure at agricultural scale. Habitat loss. And reduction in flowering plant diversity. Parasitic mites and viral pathogens spreading through commercial hive populations. While the acute crisis phase has somewhat stabilized, overall colony productivity remains significantly below historical norms. Fewer productive colonies means less honey reaching processors and less reaching retail. This supply constraint has been building for years. It is not close to resolution. At the same time, import scrutiny on international honey has increased sharply due to extensively documented adulteration. Diluting honey with corn syrup and relabeling it as pure has been identified across multiple major exporting countries. As enforcement has tightened and testing has become more rigorous, more shipments are being delayed, tested, rejected, or returned at ports of entry. The import channel that American consumers have relied on to supplement lower domestic production is contracting exactly when domestic production is also under pressure. Both supply pipelines shrinking simultaneously while consumer awareness of honey's shelf life advantages is growing and pushing demand upward. There is only one outcome from that equation. Now understand the full scope of what is actually at stake here. Honey's antibacterial properties are not folk medicine. Medical-grade honey is actively deployed in clinical wound care worldwide in burn units, surgical recovery settings, in contexts where conventional antibiotic options are being reduced due to resistance concerns. The mechanism is fully understood. The osmotic effect of honey's high sugar concentration draws moisture out of bacteria. The hydrogen peroxide activity attacks cell structures. The acidic pH creates an environment incompatible with most pathogens. This is peer-reviewed, evidence-based, clinically applied medicine. In any situation where conventional medical care is delayed or unavailable, a serious disaster, A regional healthcare system overwhelmed. Any scenario where a pharmacy is not accessible. Honey's wound care properties have direct practical value that no other pantry item can replicate. Its effectiveness as a cough suppressant is also peer-reviewed. Studies have found it performs comparably to over-the-counter alternatives for managing acute cough symptoms, without side effects, without requiring a prescription or a store visit. It provides rapidly metabolized carbohydrates for immediate energy. It substitutes directly for refined sugar in virtually every cooking application. Historically, before refrigeration existed at scale, honey was used as a food preservative coating fruits, nuts, and in some cultures cured meats, extending their usability far beyond their natural degradation point. A use case that sounds irrelevant until suddenly it is not. Yuza. Large format containers are the only rational choice for household storage given the functionally indefinite shelf life. The cost per ounce in small jars versus 5-pound containers is substantially higher. Honey stored correctly today will be fully usable 5 years from now. 10 years, 20 years. That investment does not depreciate. There is no rational argument for buying less than is practical to store. Thank you. Bye. Now here is what this entire list, all 9 items, every shortage, every supply chain fracture, every price doubling is actually pointing toward. And this is the part that separates people who watch content like this and feel informed from people who watch it and actually change something. Close to 30 million Americans already live in areas where the nearest full-service supermarket is 10 to 20 miles away. That number is growing. Oh, the store closures projected for 2026 are not evenly distributed. They are concentrated in communities with the least retail redundancy, where there is no alternative within a reasonable distance. When those stores close, the communities around them do not get replacements. They get food deserts. But even for households nowhere near those closures, the dynamics driving these 9 shortages are not isolated to single categories. They are symptoms of a system under simultaneous pressure from geographically concentrated production vulnerable to regional weather, global supply chains dependent on political stability and fuel costs on the other side of the planet, a retail infrastructure optimized for efficiency rather than resilience, and a packaging and transportation network absorbing cost increases that move directly to the consumer. These 9 items were chosen because each one fills a specific nutritional gap that standard pantry staples cannot fill. Rice provides carbohydrates, and almost no fat. Canned vegetables provide micronutrients but minimal caloric density. Beans provide protein but require fat and flavor to be sustainably edible day after day. B. The 9 items on this list: sardines, tomato paste, yeast, cooking oil, bouillon, bacon, butter, evaporated milk, honey are what make a food reserve function as an actual human diet rather than just a calorie count. And that distinction is everything. The moment you actually need to live on what you have stored. Calories alone do not sustain health, cognitive function, morale, or the functional stability of a household under extended stress. Every nutritionist, every emergency preparedness researcher, every humanitarian organization that has managed extended food crises has reached the same conclusion. Variety, flavor, fat, and familiar sensory experience are not luxuries in a food emergency. They are functional requirements. This is not an argument for panic. It is an observation about documented, verifiable, ongoing supply trends that are already producing price doubles and regional availability gaps on items that were completely reliable 2 years ago. It is a practical case for building a modest rotating reserve before the items you want become harder to find or more expensive to buy. On each of your next 3 shopping trips, add 2 items from this list to your cart. 2 items. 3 trips. Done consistently, you will find a real usable buffer in your pantry that insulates your household from the spot shortages and price spikes already becoming routine. And here is the final thing I want to leave you with, the thing this channel comes back to week after week because it is the most important and most consistently overlooked piece of this entire conversation. Every item on this list exists because of dependency. Dependency on a region, on a country, on a processing facility, on a packaging supply chain, on ocean temperatures that are shifting, on political stability that is fragile, on a system that was never designed with your household's resilience in mind. The households that are not going to be caught exposed are the ones building the ability to produce some of what they consume. Not all of it. Not dramatically. But enough. Note: a tomato plant is 95% concentration risk reduced. An herb bed makes bouillon supply chains irrelevant. A sunflower row is a hedge against every global oil disruption simultaneously. A beehive is 3,000 years of shelf-stable food produced on demand in a backyard. That is what this channel is actually about. Not fear. Not extreme preparation. Not tactical gear and bunker mentality. Real, practical, plus. Documented food knowledge, the kind that was considered basic common sense 2 generations ago, and has been systematically lost in the decades since, delivered every week, before the headlines catch up. The people subscribed to this channel are going to know about the next shortage before it reaches the shelves. They are going to understand the next price spike before it hits their receipt. They are going to have the knowledge to act while the window is open instead of scrambling after it closes. If you watch this far, you already know this is not a channel that wastes your time. Subscribe. Turn on notifications. Show up. Every week. 10. Time. What is coming next in this series goes deeper than anything covered today, and the people who have this knowledge consistently, over time, compounding week after week, are building a kind of household resilience that no single shopping trip and no single viral video can create. The window on these 9 items is open right now. It is not going to stay open. Which one are you addressing first? Tell me in the comments. Saying it out loud is the step that makes it real.